Hey, this video is about AI and education. Before becoming a science communicator, I did my PhD in physics education research, and I used to teach a lot of physics classes. So I have a lot of friends who are teachers and lecturers. From chatting to them and looking at the data and having lived experience with AI systems, it's fairly clear that AI has been fairly harmful for students' learning. Access to an all-knowing chatbot at all times seems to be really bad for our learning. It's just way too easy of a crutch. I just took this astronomy homework PDF and I uploaded it to Claude, and it gave me all of the answers immediately. Not only that, it filled out the PDF. So if you were a kid, why would you do your homework when you can just upload the PDF to Claude and have it be done for you? But I also know that AI could be unbelievably good for learning. I've made a modified version of Claude that acts like a really good tutor, never giving you direct answers to problems, but nudging you towards the solution, scaffolding your learning, not taking it away. So I made this video in 3 parts. First, we're going to look at the evidence for AI being bad for people's brains. And then there's an example of how AI could be implemented really well. And part 3 is a how-to guide, where I'll show you how to make your own AI tutor. But I think we also need to be calling for systemic change to make sure that AI is a good educational tool for everyone. It has only been 3.5 years since ChatGPT was released, but it has already made a massive impact on learning. Let's look at the evidence. Researchers in Turkey conducted an experiment with nearly 1,000 high school math students. The experiment consisted of 3 parts: a lecture by a teacher, practice problems, and a test that was very similar to the practice problems. Part 1 and 3 were identical for all students, but for part 2, students were split into 3 groups. The first group was the control. The students had access to their math textbooks to help them solve their practice problems. The second group had access to GPT-4. And the third had access to a modified version of ChatGPT that was prompted to act like a tutor. It wouldn't give direct answers, but it would nudge the students towards the solution. During the practice, the GPT-4 group had a 48% improvement over the control group. The tutor GPT group had a 127% improvement over the control group. So, how did the students do in the test without their textbooks and their AIs? Well, the GPT-4o group scored 17% worse than the control. And the difference between the tutor GPT group and the control group, the results weren't statistically significant. So, what does all of this mean? Well, AI made student learning outcomes worse. The ones that were relying on ChatGPT-4, they didn't learn as much as the ones that were relying on their math textbooks. There are obvious limitations to the study. This is a single school in Turkey focusing only on math, and this experiment was done at the end of 2023 when AI was not only newer to the students, but the AI models were worse. GPT-4 actually made plenty of mistakes in the math, but the students didn't check. During the practice sessions, they didn't notice the mistakes. They just copied the answers over. So, I want to tell you about another study. This is a study with 56 college students around the Boston area. These students were split into 3 groups and were asked to write essays in response to an SAT-style prompt. The first group was brain only, no extra tools allowed, just you and the blank page. The second group had access to Google, and the third had access to ChatGPT. The participants also wrote these essays while wearing an EEG cap, which measures the electrical activity in the brain. So, what were the results? Well, the students that were in the brain-only group, those that wrote their essays without Google or ChatGPT, showed stronger neural connectivity. More regions in their brain were lighting up, communicating with each other during that task. The Google-assisted group showed weaker neural connectivity, and the weakest one of all was the ones that wrote their essays with the help of AI. And this isn't surprising, because by the 3rd session, most of the AI users had stopped writing their essays. They were just copying and pasting the AI's output. 15 of the 18 people in that group couldn't recall what they wrote in their essay minutes after they finished writing it. EEG measurements don't measure learning, and this paper is a preprint that hasn't been peer-reviewed yet, and there is good criticism of the methodology. So if you want to read more, the links are in the description, as always. But like, come on. Clearly copy-pasting things from AI doesn't help with learning. Here's a paper from Anthropic that showed that junior software engineers that used AI to learn a new library scored 17% lower on the comprehension quiz than those who did the work by hand. Basically, there's paper after paper after paper that shows that if you're unthinkingly lean on AI, you learn less. None of these papers are particularly surprising because there is a deep truth about learning, which is if it feels easy, you're probably not actually learning. The friction is the point, the difficulty is desirable. Learning is hard work. You're literally rewiring connections in your brain. And the things that make things stick in people's brains, the stuff that actually allows you to pick up a new skill or learn a new craft, is really hard work. It's super frustrating. And the difficulty is the point. The feeling I have when I've done a good bunch of learning or a bunch of hard work is the feeling like I'm wearing a hat that is a few sizes too small. You can't get stronger and get bigger muscles without lifting weights. And honestly, right now we've given everyone a chance to bring a robot to the gym so it lifts weights for you. Part 2. AI could be really good for learning, actually. 13 years ago, CGP Grey posted a video called Digital Aristotle: Thoughts on the Future of Education. It's now called School is Broken, AI Will Fix It, because the incentives on YouTube lead even the goats to optimize titles and thumbnails for maximal click-through rates. And in that video, Gray says that soon enough, everyone should have access to their own personal Aristotle. That one day, every child will be able to have a personalized digital tutor that's optimized for their learning.
What I see coming is this: Digital Aristotle for Everyone, a computer program that tutors students individually by pulling from a library of videos like YouTube, a program that tests students on what they know and, more importantly, adapts to the way they learn over time by comparing the effectiveness of different videos and different tests to discover, scientifically, what works best.
There are a few things in the video that I disagree with, like that we won't need teachers, but the fundamental point I think is sound. Which is why I was so stoked when I found this paper. Man, I love this paper. This paper is so good. Greg Kestin and his colleagues at Harvard, they teach a big physics class.
So I teach the largest physics class at Harvard. This is the introductory physics for the life sciences.
And they're legit. They're not doing boring lectures.
It's active learning. It's research-based pedagogy. And it's been shown to work very well. But the main complaints that I get from students is you're moving too fast, but in that same lecture, I'll get students saying you're moving too slowly.
So Greg asked the question, what if an AI tutor could mimic the learning experience one would get from an expert human tutor?
We built not only in what we knew to be the best pedagogical practices from all of our time teaching together, but we also built in our expertise in teaching this specific material, these specific questions, the misconceptions that students would likely have, and we built in how we would respond to them into the AI tutor.
And when they tested it in a randomized control trial as compared to their human-led active learning class, the results were super encouraging. The students learned more in the AI-guided lesson in less time and reported being more engaged and motivated.
What surprised me, I would say, is that the students reported also being more engaged.
After our call, Greg wanted to clarify some things, so he sent me an email, and it's great. One thing I always find important to emphasize, AI tutoring is not a replacement for classroom time with peers and instructors. Students arrive with different backgrounds and absorb material at different rates, and a single instructor speaking to our room can't easily accommodate that variation. AI tutoring can personalize the pace of that foundational learning. AI tutoring isn't competing with the instructor or the classroom. It's clearing the path for both to be used far more effectively. I by no means am saying that we should be replacing teachers with AI. Teachers do so much important work that's not just increasing post-test scores. It's not just the intellectual stuff that you learn at school from teachers and from community. I also don't know how effective AI is at teaching people who aren't at Harvard at college. Teaching a 3-year-old is very, very different than teaching a 22-year-old. And I'm also worried about our dependence on AI. But at least in this isolated case of using AI as a tutor when you're an adult, this seems fairly good. If you're a student or a parent or an educator, if you use AI for teaching and learning, you can change how it interacts with you by changing the system prompt. I've been doing this for the past 6 months or so, and I found it to be really helpful. I've posted the system prompt that I've been using, that I've modified after reading Greg's paper, in the description. I've also written up a guide on how to change the system prompt for Claude or ChatGPT on my Patreon. It's free. The post is accessible to everyone. I just thought that'd be a good place to put it. But if you aren't a student and have a good job, feel free to sign up to help support the videos that I make. I really appreciate it. There are for-profit companies that are doing similar things. AI-assisted tutoring is a massive market, and I'm sure some are genuinely good, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of them are just a modified system prompt. This isn't perfect. The AI will still occasionally make things up, so do double check things. But at least it's no longer just going to directly give your kids answers to their homework. It might actually slow them down and, make them learn something. And the second part is where we need collective action. LLMs have gotten very good at figuring things out from context recently. If you upload a PDF, they can infer if this document is for work or if it's a homework assignment. It is very possible to change the constitution or the character of all of these LLMs to default it to being a good teacher rather than just something that spits out answers. Imagine if this was the default. Imagine if you couldn't cheat by uploading a homework to an AI, if that just wasn't an option that was available to you. If there was a collective push towards something like that from parents and teachers and school boards, maybe something like that could happen. This change could also come from one of the corporations that are building AI, from Anthropic or OpenAI or Google. If they set this as a default, I think that would be tremendously good. So if you're a lab employee, maybe think about that. Imagine if Anthropic said, hey, we really care about your kids' brains. We really care about Claude being good for the world, so we've changed the system prompt and the constitution for it to default to being a good tutor rather than a helpful assistant. I think a lot of people, a lot of parents, will look very positively at that. I don't think this is going to be easy, but it does feel very important. When it comes to AI and education, clearly more research is needed. It has only been 3.5 years since the release of ChatGPT. The more research we have on AI and how it interacts with human brains, the better. And the world is so different from the world I grew up in. But I just keep coming back to this feeling that I have deep in my soul, which is that AI could be really, really good for a lot of people if we implement it well. And I currently don't think we're implementing it well. The world is very strange, and the future is going to be much stranger. AI is already very transformative, and it's affecting everything. And as it gets more powerful, the world is going to get weirder, and we need to be prepared. Our brains, our judgment, our ability to think critically and reason well and to learn, that is so, so important. We cannot lose this in ourselves or in the next generation. It's the only thing we have to make sure the future goes well. Engaging with AI as a learning tool is something we need to be very careful with, but if we do it right, I think it could be really, really good.